Welcome to the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino. Tonight I'm joined by Mif Joe as we once again cover all things Celtic. Mif, the dust is now settled on what I've been calling a roller coaster of a season for Celtic. Are you missing it already after that brilliant end to the campaign?
Yes, I am. Hello, Tino. Hello, Joe. Hello, listeners. I think I'm probably needed a break right enough. It was quite intense. There was the little scene ebb and flow that we haven't really had in the past few seasons. I know maybe Andrew's first season was a bit closer in terms of games, but it didn't really feel in as much jeopardy as we did at certain points in the season on this one. So intense end to the season. For those unfortunate enough to watch us on YouTube, you might see my face is a bit redder than it normally is.
I just thought your blood pressure was up, man.
No. The intensity of the football season still continues with my son's football. I kind of coach both their teams as well, so it was festivals and all that at the weekend and cup finals and things of that nature. So I'm feeling the heat a wee bit today. So we don't have a big massive red light in the studio. It's just me and my coom, unfortunately. But yeah, with the Euros coming up, we've still got football to look forward to. But I love my international football, as you know, but it's still not the same as Celtic. I think the key thing is there was a few wee snippets kicking about on the transfer rumours today around Bernardo and Ida and things like that. So it's maybe just got to be the season for that. And how nice would it be if we got a bit early business done?
Would be. And let's see what happens there in the coming weeks. Joe, there was, in terms of the end of the campaign, brilliant finish, spectacular finish to the season actually, but there was no doubt there was various bumps in the road as we went through the way. Did you imagine that we'd finish the season with League and Scottish Cup in the bag?
I did always have that bit of belief because I mean, as I mentioned in the show, I'm still a wee guy, so I've known anything about. I've only known success in my days as a Celtic fan. So you always have that bit of belief, and I always had the other side of it. I always had that belief that they weren't that good, that they couldn't really push us all the way, and they would fall at some point. So I was half expecting it. I didn't really care about the Scottish Cup up until the day before the game. I was so invested in winning the league. There was nothing really that it didn't really cross my mind up until near the time. But yeah, I'm the same as Mif. Really, I'm not really enjoying being away for Celtic, but I think as a detox I really needed. I think just how dramatic it's been, how up and down it's been. I feel for my own health, I think it's probably doing me a few favours. So Euros coming up and whatever, but it's still not the same.
It was such a brilliant end to the season, but it was so intense. And I was talking to, I think it was James on one of the post-match shows about how I'm just shattered because it was from the Hearts game onwards. The Hearts game was huge for me. It was so important. You beat Hearts, you beat Rangers, you beat, I've lost one somewhere, St Mirren,
Dundee.
Kilmarnock, was it not?
Dundee was before it, and you play Kilmarnock to lift the title. Okay. You then get St Mirren on Trophy Day, and then it's Cup Final Day. There was just 5 huge games, and it's 4 or 5 weeks of it, and it's too much. Yeah. And delighted as we all are. I think the breaks come at the perfect time just to regroup, all that kind of stuff. And then there's a Euros, and that'll be good to look forward to. We'll get to a wee bit of that stuff actually shortly. You've got Scotland playing as we speak. We're recording just after 5 here on Monday night. You've got James Forrest starting for Scotland, which is all credit to James and what he's achieved, and obviously the other guys may feature. If anyone's watching on YouTube, you might see that I'm sporting a hooped shirt here from the guys at the Geneva CSC, so big thanks to Nicky and the guys who sent that across. I think it's an extra medium, Mif. It's a bit snug, but we'll work on the sizes. You can actually get these shirts. Good, son. You can get these shirts on the O'Neill's website at o'neills.com, and the guys then donate to the Kano Foundation, which is a brilliant link up. You can also check out Kano at thekanofoundation.com. So great stuff there. If I mentioned James Forrest, and let's stay with him for now, then you're obviously a huge fan, always have been. You've doubled down on him at different times, and you're fully vindicated in that in the way that James has finished the season. How pleased are you that he's now part of Scotland's Euro squad?
Well, I think it's, they say in life you need a wee bit of luck, and I think he's been a bit lucky in the sense that the way the cards have fallen both in his club career and also the injuries that have befallen the international team have meant that I think he's pretty much got to be guaranteed not only to be on the plane, but I think he's got to be in the starting lineup, because I think he's got the intelligence to play in the position that Steve Clarke needs him. I think he trusted him at the last Euros to play that position as well. He can play like a sort of wing back position. So yeah, I'm delighted for him, and I know it's almost became cliche because everyone's mentioned it so often, and we've touched on it as well. But being involved in football at any level the common thing now is if you're not playing, you just sulk. You sulk, you stamp your feet, you have a moan, and then you just move away and go somewhere else and hope that you'll play there. With James Forrest now, no doubt financially it benefited him to stay at Celtic. He'd been offered an extension in his deal, but even more so, that could have led to the wrong behaviours coming in for him, the wrong attitude coming in for him. Well, that manager doesn't fancy me. He picked me the last time he was here, but now he doesn't fancy me, so I'll just go away and I'll, is B-Boss still open? I know I'm old. B-Boss and Bamboo and all that. Bamboo, no. China White. So. No, they know me anyway, no.
Completely lost.
No, the Archies. So he could have been away out, having a party, but clearly what he's done is he's kept himself fit. He showed a good example, and when his teams needed him, he's been called upon, and look where it's led him, to have an excellent 6 weeks. But not only that, it's the impact he's had. It's not like he's come in and just held a position or held a jersey. He's been assisting, he's been scoring.
Yep.
He has helped his team get over the line. And quite often a criticism levied at Scotland managers, certainly Craig Brown would stand out for that. Joe, just kid on, you don't need to worry about it. It's long before your time.
Jock Brown's brother. Jock Brown, Celtic Exchange podcast.
There we go. We don't pick foreign players. Scotland managers tend to be quite loyal to the small group of players that have got them at finals and things. So to have a foreign player coming in, I think it's a really big thing for the squad as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. And you were talking about the example that James Forrest, continues to lead by, and both Steve Clarke and Brendan Rodgers have spoken recently about how he's an inspiration to young footballers. He's just such as his attitude, and that's real credit to James. A guy who could definitely learn from that, and I just seen a headline about him earlier on is Alessandro Bernabé. He's gone out on loan to Internacional in Argentina. He's played once in 11 games, available for 11 games, and he's played once. And he's the kind of guy that might have huffed and puffed at Celtic. Rodgers doesn't rate me, I need to go elsewhere. And the same things happen. And when that pattern starts to follow you, and it's only 2 clubs, but you never know, then you're in deep waters, and it's a long way back for guys like that. And Bernabé would do worse than to look at James Forrest and say, when you're not playing, there's ways to approach it and different things you can do to try and get yourself back involved. Joe, just in general, so obviously James Forrest is joined in the Scotland setup by Callum McGregor, Tony Ralston and Greg Taylor. Are you excited to see how they fare in the Euros?
Well, just another one, because I know I always give him a bit of abuse on here, but I'm not a Haksabanovic fan, never have been, but he's another one. I mean, he maybe played half a season and he puts in Instagram, the blacked out picture, I'm not getting involved. Spatted dummy at big time.
Yeah.
So
he's hardly featured at Stoke, has he?
He's had a couple of injuries, but again, I think he's in danger of, much touted wonder kid who has just started to drop down, in the levels that he's now going to are getting lower and lower. You would have thought you get to Celtic, potential Champions League football, featured in some Champions League games, did have an impact coming off the bench in a lot of games and looked really sharp, but whenever he got starts, just never really gained Angie's trust, and I think Rodgers was on him straight away as soon as he came in.
And I think all in all, there's another one. But in terms of Scotland in general, I mean, credit to James Forrest, because it is such a role model for younger players. I mean, Celtic and beyond. In terms of, I mean, he's not played a lot of football for the last 3 years. Let's not forget that. As much as every manager has come out and praised James Forrest whilst he's been at Celtic. Now, going back to Neil Lennon, that dreaded season that we won't discuss, he was injured for most of it, but he was still. But then again, he was still there the next year. Rodgers was in awe of James Forrest in terms of his attitude, his dedication and training. He wasn't getting a lot of minutes, but do you know what? He was still setting an example. Ange never really played him, but do you know what? Whenever he done anything, he'd really stepped up. So credit to James Forrest, and thoroughly deserves his place. But in terms of Scotland in general, I mean, Tony Ralston's I think's an interesting one. I mean, not really played a minute for Scotland. Potential he's starting in probably.
But do you know what, as Mif says, Joe, sometimes you just need that luck. It's unfortunate and it's bad luck that some guys in that position have been injured, but that's how football can go. You hear so many stories over the years about these sliding doors moments, and all of a sudden Tony Ralston's got a chance, and he wouldn't have banked on that halfway through this campaign, but all of a sudden it's there for him. And if he applies himself, so Scotland play tonight, they play again on Friday, I think they play Finland, and then who knows what could happen. There's still a couple of guys that might get cut from the squad, and I know Lyndon Dykes get injured, but it's not set in stone that they will all travel, but there's a strong possibility that Tony Ralston and the rest of the guys do. And then it's over to them. And what an opportunity. Some guys will go through their whole career, particularly if you're Scottish, and never go to a major finals, and all of a sudden these guys will get this opportunity. So good luck to the boys. Hope it all goes well. A guy who won't be making it, and I was really disappointed to hear, I'm sure you all were, was Matt O'Reilly. And his national manager, Kasper Hjulman, has come under serious grief from people back in Denmark, least of all Thomas Gravesen, who's come out and said he's made a mistake. That Matt
Very reliable source, you must say.
Tommy Graveson's a bit.
You're quoting a guy that's moved to Vegas. He's a multi-millionaire and like number one COD player in the world. It's not necessarily.
He's got his finger on the pulse.
I know, it's not Gary Neville we're quoting here.
But there's a perception that Matt O'Reilly, amongst others, is the future of Danish football, and guys are excited about him. And then, he's 23 and he's failing to take him. And he said something like, it was a tough decision, but he's got lots of international games ahead of him. If you genuinely believe that and believe in him, you've got to play him. And he said a really cheap dig at the Scottish League in the process. I don't know what the Danish league is like. I'm going to guess not a whole lot better. But if it was good enough for Henrik Larsson, and it's good enough for Dyson Maeda to go to World Cups, and it's good enough for Callum McGregor to go and lead Scotland, I think it's good enough for somebody to go and play for Denmark. And I think it's cheap to judge the league rather than judge the player. Can he play ball or can he not? And can you see beyond the league and make the right decision? I think
in O'Reilly, the manager, if you look at the overall composition of the squad, he's went back to tried and tested. I noticed that Damsgaard had got in. He's barely played a minute for Brentford, but he is trusted by the manager. Eriksen, if anybody's watched Man United, Eriksen's done. He's absolutely done. But again, he's a national icon, so
undroppable in a lot of cases.
If you're going to take O'Reilly instead of him, it would be a very, very, very brave manager that done so. For me, around Matt O'Reilly, I think that's the manager, kind of deflecting away for the decision to have a dig at the league. I would completely agree with you. If you're good enough, you're in. I think in the case of O'Reilly, I think he's had a couple of additions and maybe just not quite grabbed it, and I think that was round about the time when he did dip in form with Celtic. I think there was a game against Northern Ireland in particular. So I think there's some mitigating circumstances around that. He probably felt a bit under pressure at that time to perform because he knew that was the one chance he was going to have, and invariably those situations never really bring the best out in players. I think players need to feel that they're in an environment where they're going to get nurtured, they feel part of it, and the best got to get brought out of them. I think it's safe to say that Riley probably isn't exactly feeling that when he's joining up with the Danish national team, because he feels he's just constantly needing to perform rather than feeling trusted by the manager. So all those emotions contained within, ultimately it's bad news for Celtic. It's bad news for Celtic because Matt O'Reilly's going to sit there and say, right, if I had joined Atletico Madrid in January and played for them, would I be in the squad? The answer to that is yes.
Well, that's the thing as well, though. I mean, it would have took him for being at Atletico Madrid for 4 months, where he might not even have kicked the ball. Purely the name of him playing for Atletico Madrid was probably enough.
Yeah, it's just the status of being an Atletico Madrid
And you look
player.
at Celtic, especially that last World Cup, you had Dyson Maeda, last 16. The only reason they got that far is because they were knocked out by Croatia, who had Juranovic. I mean, the success Celtic players have had at major tournaments and international stage. Let's not forget as well, Matt O'Reilly won the man of the match in a Champions League game at Parkhead. Now, I know it's one game and it's maybe not enough, and it's if you're talking on paper, I mean, you're looking at that guy get Damsgaard, barely kicked the ball. It's just beyond me. But again,
you've also got the situation where Scotland decide to take, and I'm excited by it, Ben Doak as a wild card. He's potentially the future for Scotland. Not yet, he's as yet uncapped, but it's like, do you know what? Let's do something different. Scotland aren't going to win the Euros. Breaking news: Denmark aren't going to win the Euros. But can you do
Spoiler alert for Tino.
Can you do something exciting to excite your nation? To say, listen, I've got this kid on the bench and let's throw him on and see what happens. You think Wayne Rooney's been doing the rounds media-wise recently, does the overlap and all these things. And he's done a couple of brilliant interviews, actually. Very down-to-earth guy. He's a very likeable guy, actually.
Did you see the one with Neville?
Aye.
We cut with Gary Neville.
And he talked about how if he could have played for one club in his career, who would it be? Celtic. Nice to hear. But Wayne Rooney's a guy that England threw in. Was it 2004 he broke through? I think there's a new documentary on it. And he was up against France and Lilian Thuram and Zidane and all these guys. And they just thought, we're just going to throw this kid in and see what happens. And it excites a nation. And I think Ben Doak is potentially that guy for Scotland. And Matt O'Reilly could and should have been the guy for Denmark. Quick question, Mif. How does it affect A, Matt O'Reilly's own headspace? And I agree with you, it's not good news for Celtic. And B, his potential transfer value?
His headspace, I think he's shown that he is quite sensitive to external factors, given the dip in form that he experienced after his move fell through to Atletico. Well, it fell through. Celtic refused to sell him, but Celtic were within their rights to do so. But again, I think Celtic knew they had a character there that could get over that and perform, and he did, and that's hugely to his credit. And I would also say Rodgers and the management team around him. I think they've obviously worked with him around that, because there's a huge, element of psychology in that. Transfer value, I don't think it affects what we were going to get from anyway, but I think a showcase at the Euros with a couple of cameos might have added a bit to that. To me, I think it makes it quite a open shut cases that he will go now in the summer, I'm afraid to say. The only thing that might change it is if he decides to stay and have a crack at the Champions League and go in January.
And I don't think that would be wholly unreasonable for all.
Again, I think what Areo's shown is that he's mentally tough enough to perform if he knows the path's clear for him. And what Celtic know is there's no point in keeping players that don't want to be there. If Areo's committed for 6 months and Celtic are happy with that, Areo's happy with that, and he gets to perform at the Champions League, then that value could then subsequently increase. I actually feel a wee bit sorry for him, because he's clearly someone who studies the game, works in his game, takes on advice. I just think it's a really, really straight, like it was with Kyogo getting left out for Japan. Celtic fans are naturally very, we like to defend our players. Mm-hmm. We're passionate about that. We see them playing under relentless pressure every week. I think sometimes they put this overall standard of the league in front of the standard which the players are being asked to play at week in, week out. It's so intense to come, whether it's away up at Dingwall for a 12 o'clock kick-off, or whether it's in the heat of the battle, a Celtic and Rangers game. It's 100% that's getting demanded every single time. So the mental resilience a Celtic player has to show is quite significant. But the Denmark manager, in his wisdom, has saw fit to leave O'Reilly out. From what I can gather, the Twitter reaction to that wasn't.
How's your Danish? I didn't get a word there other than every comment is O'Reilly. There's a
handy bit called Translate Post. Came in really handy for me.
The other side of it, Mif, and Joe, hi Joe, is there's some folks that were tweeting saying, I don't mind that O'Reilly's not going, keeps him fresh for next season for Celtic, blah, blah, blah. And I can never ever buy into that theory, because you imagine a footballer's headspace, you want to play at the top level, you absolutely want to represent your country, and you want to perform on the big stage. So there's no doubt, and he is a balanced guy, Mif, but there's no doubt that'll come as a pretty crushing disappointment to him. And hopefully, and the signs are there that he can pick himself back up and regroup for whatever might be next. You've also got the situation just now where it's silly season in terms of transfer rumours, and it's Atletico Madrid, it's Inter Milan, and it's Southampton, which is quite bizarre when you look at that.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
What I will say is Mrs. Mif isn't a Celtic fan, but she's poised on O'Reilly's Instagram for his holiday photos.
Well, keep paying close attention to that, because they'll be coming out very soon. But the suggestion is at Southampton. So Russell Martin, the manager there, former Rangers player, former manager of Matt O'Reilly at MK Dons, keen on a reunion, as you can imagine. But Matt O'Reilly must be aiming higher than that. Atletico, what a move, perfect fit. And if that doesn't work out, he should stay around that ballpark. Going to Southampton to float around the lower half of the Premiership, or the Premier League, sorry, isn't the move.
What about that midfield three of Aribo, Armstrong and O'Reilly?
Oh shit, Armstrong's gone. He's
injured. He's injured.
No, he's out of contract.
He's out of contract as well.
Anyway, let's move on.
Aye.
Southampton Exchange.
Wait a minute. Back up the road, son.
Armstrong?
Stuart Armstrong? I'd have him back. I'd have him back.
One guy we won't be seeing playing again for Celtic is Joe Hart. Obviously, we've seen the spectacular end to his Celtic career and went out on the highest of highs. You'll have seen again was it Josip Juranovic's wedding?
Even more spectacular. We sing song.
That's what I was going to say. You've caught him singing.
Steaming though.
Don't worry, be happy. Steaming. Listen, he's been great for Celtic. Celtic have been great for him, and he's just fully embraced it. But what would your parting words be for Joe Hart, Joe?
Well, I've spoken to Joe Hart a couple of times. Nice guy, very down to earth. I know
you've dropped a name there, Joe.
I know.
We're dumb.
I know. But no, same old stuff really. Just perfect match. Joe Hart came to Celtic at the perfect time, and Celtic came at the perfect time for Joe Hart. It was just a match made in heaven really. So, fair play to him. He's clearly now just because I honestly think he'll be getting the megaphone. I can see him first game of the season in August, Flag Day, he'll be guy at the front of the North Curve.
Standing
just,
section.
100%. And just it genuinely now looks like one of those guys that would be in the stand and want to be there every week. So fair play to him. He's come in, done a job when, you know, he probably wasn't expecting to have that sort of end his career. So all the best to him.
Yeah, it's been a brilliant end to his career, and we're now linked with every goalie who's ever played the game. If you'll have seen it, there's honestly been about 20 names linked, and there's so many, so we're not going to speculate on any just now, because a lot of it that'll be futile, but it's something that's a bit more serious. We'll try and address it. What's going to be interesting is you've got Joe Hart doing punditry on the BBC for the Euros, and you've got Ange doing ITV, and both of those guys could be interesting to watch from a Celtic point of view.
Yes, indeed. Both very prominent recent figures in Celtic's recent history. Both really good guys to listen to in their opinions of the game. Very passionate about it, and again, their union was huge in stabilising the club at a time when we were really worried about the way it was going to go. I think in Ange you've got a guy who's an idealist. He certainly wants to play in one particular way, and in Hart you've got someone who is just fully, if he feels like he's part of something, is fully invested in it. And for us, that combination just came together at exactly the right time when we needed those sort of kind of leaders within the overall group that were there to support McGregor. And I think both of them played a huge part in McGregor being able to establish himself as a genuine dressing room leader. So both guys that I like listening to, both guys that I'm always interested in hearing from. I think in the case of Hart, I think he felt there was going to be speculation. He may have got replaced at the end of the season, and he spotted the opportunity to do it in his terms.
Yeah.
And I think what that allowed is it allowed the fans to pay proper homage to him for his commitment over the past 3 years. For me, we have a rich history of signing poor goalkeepers. We do. I was subjected to Gordon Marshall in my early days, so I can remember those days vividly. Since then, we've had some good keepers, but a lot of poor ones. So it's a decision we have to get right. We signed Barkas without checking the medical that he had hands. So let's just hope this time that we get it right, and we have done. We've had plenty of time to prepare. There's no excuses. We need to have identified suitable replacements and made appropriate offers, and I highlight that, appropriate offers, because we are at that time of year again. We're all sitting here hoping. There were some prominent podcasters talking about transfer records getting broken. Contracts were getting renewed at high prices because we're going to break the transfer record not once, but twice in a transfer window. None of it happened. The more cynical amongst us had suggested that it wouldn't happen. And I'm afraid to say I'm very worried. Again, I'm very worried that it won't happen again.
We'll get to some of that chat later on in the piece. I'm not saying I'm not worried or anxious about the business that Celtic do, but I think we will put the foot to the floor in summer. I really do, but we'll get to that. Joe Hart, just to finalise on that though, I think he's spoken previously about the fact that he just needed someone to believe in him at that age and stage in his career and take a chance. And was that guy. So we'll very much look forward to those two guys speaking across the summer. The other thing is, just as you've been talking there, Mif, Joe Hart got the perfect send-off and all the fanfare that comes with it. And if Matt O'Reilly does move on, he doesn't get that. It's funny how football works. He won't get that proper chance. It's Instagram nowadays, isn't it? That'll be your farewell if he goes. But he
Hashtag Insta.
It's a wee picture of him sort of waving to like a black and white fan base.
So he won't get the same adulation. But we'll see what happens with Matt O'Reilly. Let's take a short break. But before we do so, a quick reminder that if you enjoy what we do here at the Celtic Exchange and want to support the show, then check out the celticexchange.supercast.com for details on how you can do just that. The support of our listeners is invaluable, and without you there wouldn't be a Celtic Exchange to speak of, so please take a couple of minutes and visit the celticexchange.supercast.com. OK, let's take that short break. When we come back, we'll be looking at some of Celtic's summer signings from last year and what the future may hold for them. Welcome back, folks. One of the biggest talking points throughout the season has been last summer's transfer window and some of the quite bizarre signings we made almost 12 months ago. Celtic spent the best part of 20 million in the summer, so we can't accuse the board of being tight as such, but we can look at the merits of how they spent that money and make our own minds up about the players involved. You've got Louis Palma, Mike Nawrocki, Gustav Lagerbielke, Jan Kwon, Odin Thiago Holm and Marco Tillo, who all arrived in the summer window. You've also got Paulo Bernardo and Nat Phillips, who joined on loan. But Joe, what's your initial reflections on that window and on the future of some of these guys?
Still getting the shivers when you hear Nat Phillips' name. Just I mean, last year I was quite buzzing with that window, and then obviously, you know, what happened.
What got you buzzing about it at the time? What excited you at the time?
What excited me at the time was change, because I think change always gives that bit of excitement. We were in a good position, we had a bit of money, you know, we were in the back of winning the league with Champions League coming up. I was quite, as much as I was sad Andrew was going, Brendan Rodgers was coming in, and I was never really in the camp up until February 2019, where I was, you know, in the Rat Brigade. Other than that, I was genuinely pleased to see him come in, and I trusted who he was going to bring in would deliver. Obviously, I mean, you count in one hand the amount of them that actually did deliver over the course of the season, but
you can probably count in one finger.
Yeah, probably. So it's a strange one, because I do feel I'm too used to seeing a lot of summers where we've just under-delivered. We've under-delivered in terms of the signings, the amount of money that we've spent, where players seem to just fall way short of the standards that all of us expect. While those standards sometimes can be considered unreasonably too high, I don't think that's the case, but in some cases, I think in a lot of cases, some of us expect to do really well in Europe when we're not spending the same level as other clubs.
Well, here's the thing, Joe. See, just as you're talking there, you're thinking about that, you know, when you think about your demographic and the amount of summers you've seen, and you mentioned there that you're, you know, pretty underwhelmed and disappointed, yet, you know, out of 11 out of those 12 summers, no doubt, we've came out on top in the league title race, and then that levels accusations that Celtic fans have been entitled. But I think what we're looking for, it's not just a monetary amount being spent. I've landed on this because I've given it some thought, Tino.
Right,
given it some thought.
Good to hear.
And I don't want you to think this is in any way scripted.
Because
you know I don't.
You never look at the agenda. But
I like to go. A bit fun cut. I like that. I like that.
Don't
pass me the guitar, Dave. But what we're looking for is the squad being strengthened and positions being filled that need filled. You mentioned there, was it 20 million?
Ballpark 20 million, yeah.
20 million is nothing. It really is. These days, Tino, it's nothing.
For how much
that's got to get you the right leg of a good player these days. You know, as in a top player, someone that's going to really improve your team. But even at that, we all know we needed a goalkeeper to genuinely challenge Joe Hart. We needed a left back to genuinely challenge Greg Taylor. We didn't get either of those. We brought in two substandard. I say substandard centre halves. We don't really know if they are. Rodgers has decided they are. It might have been because they're not his signings that he's decided they are. But then, you know, poor Kwon after that Bilbao game, he just get torpedoed directly at the squad. Yang's shown flashes, but again is so raw that he's well below the standard you would need to be relying on.
He's not a starting winger.
So, again, I think he was bought for next season, but necessity had brought him into the equation this year, and clearly I could see why he'd be performing well in training, because he's clearly a very skillful player. Just decision making in games seemed to let him down a wee bit. So when you add that up, you've been through a fair number. You know, home come in and made a few what I thought were decent contributions and disappeared again. So when you add all those things up, you know, spend £20 million on a various amount of players, it's not really strengthened the areas of the squad that were really, really weak. And we knew the Asia Cup was coming up. We didn't really prepare for that. So I think it's more around the planning and the identification of the players in the areas that we need that we're looking for, rather than it just being like, all right, we've spent £40 million, but there's another winger, there's another striker, there's another right back, and you're like, well, no, how's that squad actually being managed? And I think that's the key for me.
But also, sorry, your point about not being Rodgers signs, and you sort of mentioned the two centre halves. I could honestly sit here with confidence and say the only real signing that Rodgers pinpointed as being his own was Adamida. Yeah, it was the only one that he spoke about to say with great confidence, I've watched this guy live. You guys, look, I know you're going to get in Celtic websites, it's, you know, a quote from him saying, you know, he's a really promising young player that we've spotted, he's had a good season, whatever. Adamida, he could actually anecdotally tell you how good he was based on seeing him live.
Yeah, I mean, you get the platitudes every time a player signed, regardless who it is, whether it was Lager Bielka or Thiago Homer, whoever came in after Rodgers arrived, and there's we could all write them ourselves, the quotes, delighted, he's a talented youngster and we're looking forward to him joining up with the squad. There's that kind of thing, and absolutely he's identified Adamida and spoken about his knowledge of him from a young age. And
there were someone here that said he'd be a good sign.
Who? They said he would be a good signing? Yes. I'll need to roll back the tapes on that.
You will, son. You will.
But the biggest indicator in terms of the impact that these players have had or not is look at your cup final. You know, sometimes we'll ask the question hypothetically halfway through a season, but if you're a cup final tomorrow, would this guy play? And none of these guys feature. I don't think there was a minute. Palmer never come off the bench, did he? There wasn't a minute's worth of game time in the cup final for any of these guys. I'm going to give you some quick stats on the various players here. So, Louis Palmer, 36 appearances across the campaign, 5 in the Champions League. You've got Yang, 31 appearances and also 5 Champions League appearances. Thiago Holm, 13 games, 2 of them in the Champions League. Lager Bielka, 10 appearances, 2 Champions League. And then you've got Nawrocki, 13 appearances, 0 Champions League. Beyond that, Kwon goes out to St Mirren, plays 9 games there. Marco Tilly goes to Melbourne City after having come off the bench twice for Celtic, and he only played 4 times for Melbourne and he's been injured. It reads like the car crash that it is. You know, I've got genuine hope for Palmer and Yang, and they're the guys with the most appearances out of the 7. You just don't know about Thiago Holm. And as much as you're bang on with in terms of we've just not seen enough of Nawrocki and Lager Bielka, you'd like to, I was going to say if you trust the manager, and I don't know if you do trust the manager, but you'd like to think that he's run the rule over them in training and just thought these guys don't fit the bill. The interesting part of those various stats though are it tells you just how weak we were earlier in the season, that Palmer's got 5 Champions League games, Yang's got 5, Thiago Holm's got 2 and Lager Bielka's got 2, because these guys right now, today or last week in the cup final, can't get anywhere near it. And it does kind of confirm that Rodgers had some juggling act to do in terms of the early part of the campaign as a result of that poor window.
Poor Brendan. It's just such a shame for him.
Are you still Brendan out?
Just so bravely battled through. No, listen, I think even the most ardent kind of Rodgers hater, if there is such a thing, would have to admit that he navigated the team very well through that period, because he was quite open on the fact that he felt he had a lack of quality, and I think most right-minded Celtic fans would have agreed with him that he didn't have the right amount of quality in there. My criticism of him around that time was the almost random nature of some of the decisions that were getting made around which subs were being brought on around the bench. You know, Burnham getting chucked on at left wing when we needed a goal against Hearts. You know, stuff like that happened throughout the season. But if the January window was an indication of what's to come, what he did do was he gave the green light in 2 signings that improved the squad and were a massive factor. I mean, Kuhn's popped up with some vital assists and goals as well. To me, he still looks a wee bit lightweight. What I'm hoping with Kuhn is a pre-season with the squad. I'll see an improvement in him. But with Ida, that was a case of identifying someone who is going to make a difference, and he was an absolute game changer for us.
Make a difference now.
You know, and that's that. I think that's what, when we go back to that squad management element, that's what the fans are yearning for. Someone that can come in and say, right, okay, Greg Taylor, you'll be able to play, you know, between 15 to 20 games next year, but here's a guy that's going to start in the Champions League and going to start your big games, so that we're not getting exposed for, you know, long diagonals in the 90th minute.
But make Greg Taylor better as well. That's the difference.
Listen, I'm a huge fan of Greg Taylor. I say this with all due respect. We saw what happened to Kieran Tierney when he got flogged over 3 seasons and played in every game. It leads to bad things. You know, for Greg Taylor is dancing every dance, and it's just not fair.
It's going to catch up.
And you know just how many games Celtic plays. You've got 38 league games, and now you're guaranteed 8 Champions League. So there's 46 straight away.
Excellent.
And then the Scottish Cup and League Cup beyond that. Joe, of the 7 players I've mentioned there, and you know, given the various appearance stats, who for you has a definite future at Celtic? And same question as such, who doesn't?
I mean, definite. I don't think any of them really have a definite future, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. I know you were going on about Palmer. I'm not a massive Palmer fan. I mean, I wasn't
getting on about him.
No, but you said, like, I mean,
I like him.
He done well.
Tino's a Palmer fan.
I know, but to me, he's got a really good dead ball. But honestly, if you're a winger at Celtic, you need to be able to beat a guy. You need to be able to beat your first man. I don't see Palmer having. He's not a Celtic winger for me.
I am completely torn on Palmer. On the one hand, you know, meandering inside every time you get the ball is not acceptable. On the other hand, it was unfortunate at the time when they get injured, and I think he come back fitter and willing to work harder. He had a bit of an aberration in the semi-final against Aberdeen when he tried something stupid when he should have held on to the ball. But again, young man, relocating, new country, still a relatively, you know, kind of inexperienced age in all things around the nature of Scottish football. Again, in proper pre-season with the team, working with the manager, getting himself fit, and if he maintains that work ethic that I've seen towards the end of the season, I still think there's a chance, because I think he's got enough natural talent that if he can mould that into something that's going to work for the team, there's a wee bit of hope there.
But I think also as well, you can be made to be a scapegoat sometimes in these scenarios. I mean, like, his credibility will obviously go down with the majority of the fan base, based on just that one semi-final, because it was a split decision. And do you know what? If Callum McGregor done it, we would be getting dogs abuse for it. But in terms of summer signings,
Stuart Armstrong done it against England.
Exactly.
The pass was on, he just never heard it.
Exactly.
Right. So some of the commentary around the pass really annoyed me. Somebody was saying, oh, he tried to showboat and make the fancy pass. He didn't. He tried to make the right pass. His execution was wrong. The decision to make that pass was right. So I think there's this narrative that's been created that he's all out for himself and stuff.
No.
And I'm not sure what that's been based on. You can say that if you want to say that he's not a good player, you don't believe in his ability, you don't believe in his touch or technical skills, that's fine. But to try and somehow get in his headspace and say this guy's all out for himself, I don't think your feet touch the ground at Celtic under Brendan Rodgers if that's your approach. And the fact that Rodgers still sees fit to include him in squads and bring him back in gives a wee bit of hope for the future.
Yep.
Let's see what happens with Louis Palma. And I do like him, and I think he's got the ability, and that's where I'm at.
Just on that, I think he's a 10. I don't think he's a wing.
And that's the thing, because we don't play by 10, and that's where it might not work out.
I think he's a 5 player. No, mind that.
the other guy who I'm a fighting a losing battle with is Yang. You mentioned this, Mif. He's clearly got ability. You can see he's got the fast feet. He seems to be a hard worker. He seems to, be pretty level-headed. Gets the head down and gets on with it.
See that game at Tynecastle? See up until, and honestly, I know it was only 10 minutes in. I actually watched the first 10 minutes of that game before he got sent off, and he was so good.
He was
brilliant.
So he went into that game on the back of his couple of best performances at Celtic, and you were desperate for him to start. He gets to start. 10 minutes in, his day's over, and he's never really recovered from that.
The Aberdeen game, he was.
Well, I was just going to say, but that aside, yes, he was at fault for the third goal at Ibrox, the Rabbi Matondo goal. He shows him inside, but I think he's been so harshly treated for that. People are now, every time his name comes up, it seems on Twitter, and that goal against Rangers, it's like, all right, the guy's made it. He's a young footballer, and he's made a mistake. Show me any
footballer. I know this is a Celtic podcast. What a goal it is, by the way.
Great goal.
It's an absolute outstanding strike. But I think what seems to have been lost in the modern Celtic fan is the issue of development and how a player has to develop. Quite often they'll have to make mistakes, maybe not quite as grand as that one, but they'll have to make mistakes to learn from them. And I think with Yang's learned the hardest lesson of all, and that is that if you cost a goal in a big game like that, you'll pay a price for it.
Yeah.
He's paid a price in terms of minutes and involvement, but again, I would hold out a huge amount of hope for him developing over the summer after a year of being here. I don't think you can judge Yang the same as you would judge somebody as, say, Home, because I think Home had more experience in playing in a European league, albeit the Norwegian league, which we wouldn't regard as higher standard as ours. But I think he'd played over 70 games before he'd played for Celtic. Yang coming in,
second league in Korea, wasn't it? Second league in Korea.
So that was Kwon.
That was Kwon was second league. Yang was. So he's come in. He's probably played more than we were expecting him to, but I would say he would be someone I'd expect Yang maybe to kick on this year. That's what I would expect. I think he's got the potential where, see if he gets a good pre-season. I think I've mentioned pre-season about 5 times.
Big fan of pre-season.
But I love a pre-season. Well, clearly not anymore. But if you get Yang in and you get him fit and you get his confidence up, I think we're on to something.
I think what we've also spoken through here is the fact that Palma, Yang and Odin Thiago Home, just to use those three examples, they've made quite high profile errors. Palma against Aberdeen in the semi-final, Yang absolutely against Rangers, Thiago Home getting sent off against Feyenoord unnecessarily.
Really 4 red cards between their summer signings, would that be right?
Who else?
Home, Lager Bielka, both at Feyenoord. Yang, maybe it's 3.
Palma been sent off, no?
Don't think so.
No. We'll go 3 then.
Joe's created a disciplinary issue.
I have.
But there's mistakes there, but you'd like to think that's the thing, Mif. None of these players are or were at the time first team ready, and they've been signed as development type players, and they've made mistakes, which is expected.
The Yang one, I mean, that's not a sending off. That's
against Hearts.
No, we have seen since then that other decisions for those things have not resulted in red cards.
I'm talking less about the sending off, more the fact that he made a mistake against Rangers, high profile, and he should learn from that.
But that ultimately, that's when, again, it goes back to that luck thing. If he doesn't get sent off for that,
but it's consistency.
It's then he's then still having a good game. Celtic have still got 11 men in the park. That result looks different as Celtic career takes a different path, so luck plays a part in these things as well. He can dust himself down, use the experience he's gained. I still think he can make an impact.
I think if you speak probably to any player that has featured for Celtic over the years who's either made it or not, you can probably pinpoint, or the player can probably pinpoint the moment he knew he was going to make it. I scored this goal, I set this up, I played part of a big one. And likewise, the guys who don't make it can say, I had a really poor game, or I done this, or I gave that away.
Look at Marcus Fraser, broke into first team, bad knee injury, came back, way back. Dougal McCarrison was an absolute goal machine.
Jeez.
Dougal McCarrison broke his leg, I think, playing a charity game.
For those in camera,
but what I mean is, if you're in the building at Celtic, you have to have shown a significant level of ability.
Yeah.
What you then need after that is a showcase and a bit of luck.
But
if you don't get that.
But also, just to summarise in terms of the summer signings, the difficulty you have when you're signing guys, all those guys that are under 23, it's not ability. Because I've seen a lot of this on Twitter and a bit, on paper, yeah, we should be beating teams like Ross County every week. It's actually going across a season for 38 games thinking, I've won this one. You could have one bad game out of 10, and all of a sudden your cards are marked.
Yeah.
So it's that's a challenge. It's not ability. It's mental strength.
I think anyone that gets signed for Celtic to a huge extent has got ability. You can almost guarantee they've got a level of ability, but you need more than that. As Mif says, you need to have certainly the attitude, the temperament, the mentality, and the huge slice of luck. It's all part of it. So let's see how these guys go, and let's see what the moves are in the summer. Just another few players to touch on before we finish off this section. They're not new signings, but they're certainly fringe players at this moment in time. It's guys like Ben Siegrist, Kobayashi. You've mentioned Haksabanovic, who comes back from loan. Mikey Johnson, who comes back for loan.
I think that's about 5 weeks in a row he's mentioned them.
How can I not mention them as part of this section? Do any of those guys, Mif, have a future at Celtic?
No, they're all gone.
Absolutely.
All gone.
No doubt about it.
I'm disappointed with, because I actually thought it wasn't that bad. But no, I think they're all gone.
I've not even mentioned James McCarthy.
Jazza.
Come on.
Gone.
Guys,
Long gone.
B team legend. That's...
Any of the other guys, Joe? Kobayashi, we've barely seen. Siegrist he's come for the paycheck.
Again, though, you look at Kobayashi again was one game. Kobayashi was the game at Ibrox when it was a dead rubber. It's game. And now, don't get me wrong, you're glad that that's happened than, further down the line when you actually are so reliant on him. But there's instances like that. Now, you also look at the flip side. This time last year, Liam Scales was in that category all day long. We would be talking about Liam Scales being
you'd have
no doubt about it, cut off. So I'm expecting next season a McGregor, Kwon and home midfield three. That's
good luck with
that's going to happen.
Scared to mention Scales.
Bookmark it, folks.
Yeah, Tino chucks a hand grenade across here or something.
But it's clear, these names I've mentioned, as well as the 7 summer signings and a few others. I think there has to be a fair bit of flux during the summer. There's going to be a lot of change, and it'll be interesting to see what they go with. Did you see the Brendan Rodgers Callum McGregor show on Sky Sports Friday night? Did you catch it?
Not yet. I'm due to watch.
It's a decent watch. It's pretty much just a half an hour sit down with the two of them. Clearly huge mutual respect to see. But to finish off this section, if I'll ask you a question about the man. How do you feel about the fact that it is Brendan Rodgers who's absolutely going to be the guy calling the shots as we head into this latest window? And as far as I know right now, Celtic don't seem any closer to replacing Mark Lawwell as head of recruitment. That in itself will give more strength to Brendan Rodgers.
Well, we've got a lot right and a lot wrong in the past. You can look at that window where we had Giakoumakis, Jota, Vickers. It's not that long ago. But then when we look at last summer's window, not great. But the January window, players brought in that were effective. So ultimately, if Rodgers is going to be here, he has to be given the tools to allow himself to do the job effectively. And dare I say, given the tools that he was promised before he come back. Because otherwise, what you're in danger of doing is just creating unnecessary friction between the manager and the boardroom and any of the sort of middle tier people that are in between that, whether that's the scouting team or whatever. I think Mark Lawwell's exit is a sign that whatever internal power struggle has been going on, Rodgers has won it. And now I just wait with interest to see if he is truly backed. That's what I wait for.
Yeah.
And in terms of last week, I obviously wasn't here, but I received a lovely video message from Anne. So Anne, thank you for your message. I will always back the team and back the manager, but listen, let's just say every time a job comes up in England, I'm a wee bit nervy.
And it sounds like Anne always backs Mif.
She was very supportive of Mif, whilst also telling him to get over himself, basically.
She gave me a stern talking to.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, let's take another short break. When we come back, we'll bring you the latest instalment of the Mystery Voice. Welcome back, folks. Last week's Mystery Voice was a Celtic hero of the 80s, and in particular a man who, like Adam Ida last week, scored the only goal in a 1-0 Scottish Cup final win over Rangers. 1989, Joe, do you know the answer?
Joe Miller.
Joe Miller signed for a Scottish record fee at the time of 650 grand from Aberdeen, November 1987, which was obviously partway through the centenary season. Played a key part that year in Celtic securing the double, and as mentioned, scored the 1-0 winner in the 1989 Scottish Cup final. He eventually returned to Aberdeen in 1993, having made just short of 200 appearances for Celtic. Mif, your thoughts on Super Joe Miller?
Absolutely loved him.
Yeah.
Loved him. Again, in that category for me of McStay, Walker, McAvaney, a player who was a real confidence player, Joe Miller, and he kind of dropped out the team after Billy McNeil left. When Liam Brady came in, he only made fleeting appearances after that, but really exciting winger who contributed with goals, could actually play through the middle as well, and you seen him do that to great effect in that cup final. Big Roy can turn into a ref and just awarded himself a throw in. Yeah. But you know, by all accounts, just a genuine Celtic man, a real humble guy, and was definitely one of my favourites growing up. I absolutely loved him.
Yeah, I think he's really well thought of, just as all the centenary team generally are, and I think he played such a huge part in that, and a very likeable, popular character. Joe, you wouldn't have remembered him certainly from the time, but have you seen bits and bobs of Joe Miller over the years?
Well, every time that goal comes up, I'm going to do a wee shout out to Gary Clark here. My dad played at Hampden the day after that Scottish Cup final for a school final. I think it was at Carden and Holy Cross, and he scored an OG. So, but he always told me every time that goal comes up, which is quite a lot in my house, because my dad likes to remind me every so often that he played at Hampden the next day. He always said, like, in the warm up they were trying to recreate the goal that he scored into the same goal. But I think he's from my neck of the woods. Joe, I think he's for Belsaw.
Your dad, he's definitely for your neck of the woods. He's for back in your house.
Joe Miller's, I think, sort of Belsaw, Hardington way. So
I think he scored in East End.
East End.
Yeah. Anyway, but a very popular character, as is Gary Clark, good friend of the show.
Don't say that.
Okay, let's take a listen to this week's Mystery Voice.
Today it is difficult, you know. Sometimes you must tell a player in the game, you have to run, move your, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Of all the quotes that you could come out with.
Do you know, I was watching you, I was looking for the glimmer of recognition. You've absolutely nailed it, so that'll get beeped out. As always, I was going to give you some clues. I suppose I don't need to give you the clues at the moment.
Come on.
For anyone listening at home, though, a couple of clues. He was part of the team, part of the squad who stopped 10 in a row. He was a notable signing when he arrived, and it kind of signalled the intention under Fergus McCann to try and stop Rangers run of league titles. And he was an international footballer who played for 2 different nations, kind of.
One of my favourites of that era, definitely. Common theme.
Don't say too
common
much.
theme, right? No, I'm not going to, but alright, well, I won't. I was going to wander into a story there that would have made it very obvious, so shut up, Mif.
Okay. As always, we'll reveal the answer in next week's show, and we'll also share the clip on socials for anyone who wants to have a go there. To finish off the show, I want to talk about 2 Celtic figures who in their own way have made a notable impact during their time at the club, one on the field and one very much for his off-field role. We spoke to both of these figures for a couple of special bonus episodes last week, and I just want to cover a wee bit more about them because some really interesting stuff came about. The first guest was Jock Brown. You mentioned him briefly, Joe, obviously brother of Craig Brown, who spent quote-unquote 510 days in paradise. That was the title of his book. And we featured Jock as part 9 of the Battle to Save Celtic series. A couple of headlines here before I come to you first for your comments, Mif. He obviously wasn't part of the takeover in 1994, but he worked in very close quarters with Fergus McCann as the general manager in 1997. He saw Wim Jansen to the club, Henrik Larsson, Paul Lambert, Lubo Moravcik, various others, and also oversaw the exits of guys like Paolo Di Canio, George Cadetti. He was treated particularly poorly by the media. You may have memories from the time, or you may have been refreshed in recent days, but he was vilified by the press, potentially for a bit of a poacher turned gamekeeper scenario. He was part of the media, he was a prominent commentator for the BBC, and he, in hindsight, has accepted he could have played a far more savvy role with the media. He could have played the game a wee bit and leaked them some information now and then, but for whatever reason he chose not to do so. He also revealed, and I think you found this interesting, Joe, that he had a deal also on up to sign Gianluca Vialli, but Fergus McCann put the brakes on it based on his age. 33 years of age, same as Lubo Moravcik at the time. What was your general thoughts, Mif, on Jock Brown and his impact at Celtic?
Well, I knew Jock Brown as a commentator when I was a young boy, so he was very prominent. The commentator, it was his commentary at Love Street 86, Celtic certainly playing like champions, all those things that are now on any Celtic DVD or YouTube video that you watch from around that time. So to paint the picture for any of the younger fans that might be listening, he was a really prominent guy in Scottish football, so for him to then go take the Celtic job or the Celtic director of football job was quite odd, because it wasn't really a huge thing then. Davy Hay had done a sort of similar role under Tommy Burns, but it wasn't a massive thing. And B, the understanding was that he was from a family of more a sort of Rangers persuasion rather than a Celtic persuasion, which nowadays I think that would be probably less of an issue really if it was the right person for the job, but back then it was maybe a wee bit more like, what are we doing that for? However, he's a lawyer, a Jock Brown qualified lawyer, absolutely did not take any prisoners, and came out probably too much late by his own admission, I gather, all guns blazing against the press, of which he was formerly part of. And when you think about the press at that time, it would have been the guys like Saleki, trainer, all that, was a wee bit of a lot of ego there amongst all of them, if you include Jock Brown in that as well. I think the job that he did for Celtic, you need to remember as well that there was an element of toxicity against McCann, so he was seen as a figurehead for McCann, so a lot of the abuse that Brown would have received for the fans would have been around that transfer policy where McCann was seen as being tight, and that Brown was the man that was being brought in to enact that policy, which then saw the departures of players that were loved by the fans. So in many ways Jock Brown was brought in as a almost human shield for Fergus McCann, because he took a lot of the flack around a lot of the decisions that were made, but pretty unfair, because now looking back you can say he was the man that was put out in front of the media, but not the man that was actually saying yes or no to deals. However, 18, 19-year-old me that was desperately wanting Celtic to stop 10 in a row did not care a jot about Jock Brown's human feelings and wanted the best players signed for Celtic. So I was possibly a contributor to those things, but ultimately Jock Brown, one thing he is, he's a very, very good football man, and I think it is without question, now that we know what happened behind the scenes, it was almost like a circus with the likes of Van Hooijdonk, Cadet, Di Canio, and then even latterly, I know it was Brown was away then, but with Viduka as well, we had a lot of really strung out player sagas in the press for a long, long time. He was trying to do his best for the club at that time under the influence of Fergus McCann. Yeah,
do you know, and it's interesting to hear your views on it. I admire your honesty, and I don't think you're alone in that. I'm
an honest guy, Tino.
I get you. That school of thought that. So his book is called Celtic Minded, 510 Days in Paradise, and it's an ironic title because yes, it was levied at him that he was a Rangers man, as was his brother. You'll catch this in the book if you ever care to read it, and it's a brilliant read. And I've got it, from speaking to Jock in person, absolutely wasn't Celtic or Rangers minded. From Hamilton Accies fan, still his club, and it is poor, and is maybe more reflective of the time that mattered. He was coming in as a general manager with a sports law background, very intelligent, as you say, Mif, and the bonus of being a Scottish football guy, had extreme knowledge of the game, and he got shot down, Joe, from day dot. Before he even started the role, the media were all over him. Jock Brown was one of the headlines the day before he took the job. So he's not even done anything yet, he's Jock Brown. You had Celtic supporters associations speaking out against him because we think he's a Rangers man. All these kind of things which haven't aged well, and on reflection are very poor. But nowadays, we're 30 years down the track. It's just very interesting to get Jock's take on it. A very decent guy, very enjoyable guy to chat to. But as you say, Mif, he was very much brought in as a buffer, as a shield to Fergus McCann, because it's quite well publicised that Fergus McCann and Tommy Burns just clashed. They had different objectives, and Fergus was very much business and infrastructure and the future of Celtic minded, whereas Tommy Burns, as a football guy, which you would very much relate to, Mif, as an 18, 19-year-old at the time, you just wanted to stop Rangers, you just wanted to win. There was that clash there, and that's why Jock Brown came in and made the calls that he had to make. I mean, the interesting side of it is the fact that he had the Vialli deal all sewn up. he'd have been lauded as a bit of a hero for getting something like that over the line, and it's Fergus that puts the brakes on it, and you don't get that win that might have kind of saved him in the eyes of some fans. But it's a really interesting tale. Really enjoyed speaking to him. So you can get that now. That's part 9 in the battle to save Celtic. The other special we brought out last week was very much for a guy who had an impact on the park, Murdo McLeod, and I believe you've got a nice anecdote, Mif, about the impact he had on an early Mif.
Yeah, so he was in the team for the first game I went to, a home game where we beat St Mirren 2-0. He was just one of those guys. He stood out just with kind of pure blonde hair. As a young guy, that type of all-action midfielder. I can remember the goal he scored at Ibrox in the 4-4 draw. Absolute postage stamp to rescue a point.
Some of his goals, incredible.
He loved a hit.
Like, he was a goal this season.
He loved a good hit. However, he was on the receiving end of a good hit at the 1990 World Cup. He nearly I think he did actually get knocked out with Branco. Branco had a free kick and nearly knocked him out. So
he was still experiencing headaches 3 weeks after that, and get told to go total rest and recovery. It was mad. He actually played on. He got treated in the park. Played on for another few minutes. He's got no memory of that. It's a bizarre thing.
It was a real badging. You can see he's out cold on the pitch.
Joe, would you have, again, maybe through the power of YouTube and otherwise, any kind of thoughts on Murdo McLeod? You've different. Obviously, the Wim Jansen stuff's more recent, which we'll get to. But any of his playing stuff?
Well, I mean, I've being in a Celtic-minded house, it's usually before a Glasgow derby. Usually just go through the archives on YouTube and sit, and my dad will blow me to death and whatever game it was in the 80s. But just that, obviously incredible player. I mean, played Dortmund, he played for as well, wasn't it? So I mean, wasn't necessarily a type of guy. It was a Celtic man, cult hero. He was a exceptional player in his own right and made an impact elsewhere. So latterly I've known him really being as a pundit. He was in BBC quite a lot and spoke very, very well, and obviously went through his struggles health-wise, so it's good that he seems on the mend and whatever. I think actually you mentioned the Dortmund thing. Him and his young grandson kicked off the game, the Legends game, a week or two ago, which is a nice touch. So, I mean, in terms of his own story, so Hugh Keevins was in on the recording. Hugh has written Murdo's biography, and he says if you wanted to live a kind of Roy the Rover Celtic story, this is it. In terms of the drama, he scored the goal when 10 men won the league in 1979 to make it 4-2. He was part of Love Street 86, which I know James certainly speaks about it as his, one of his greatest ever. Third goal. What
a moment. And then, part of Stopping the 10 with Wim Jansen, which for maybe slightly younger fans than myself, and include myself actually, one of the greatest days in modern Celtic history. Hugh, as I say, has written the book, and they've been close friends for 40 years, and it's not over dramatising the situation. You mentioned Murdo's health at different times, Joe, and Hugh describes it as his third chance at life after receiving life-saving surgery in both 2010 and 2022. But good to see he's keeping well and doing a lot better than he was. So it's an enjoyable listen, particularly for folks of a certain era. The new book's coming out in October, so definitely want to check out. But as I say, Mif, a genuine Celtic hero.
Absolutely, and someone who is always fondly remembered. I think his style of play, for those who've seen him play, always endeared them. He was a fully committed player, but then his involvement in the season, Stop the 10 with Wim Jansen, just further solidified that. And there was some lovely pictures. I think it was during the Celtic Rangers game when Henrik Larsson was taking his seat, and Murdo and his wife saw Henrik and his wife, and I think they were clearly obviously very close when it was here. And it just shows you the power of the relationships that last over periods of time. We see them as Celtic players, Celtic managers, Celtic coaches, but at the end of the day they're people, you know what I mean? And Henrik's clearly aware of Murdo's recent struggles, and I just thought it was a really heartwarming moment. Yeah, a really nice touch, and he's still very close with Wim Jansen's family. So Wim sadly passed away a couple of years ago now, but he's still very close with his family back in the Netherlands. The episodes with Murdo McLeod and Jock Brown are both available right now in podcast format and on YouTube, and as always you can get links to these episodes and more at thecelticexchange.com. You can also access all 9 episodes of The Battle to Save Celtic while you're there, and this series, as touched on, covers the dramatic events that led to Fergus McCann's takeover in 1994, so check that out if you get a chance, and be sure to like and subscribe and all of those other kind of things whenever you're there to access the Celtic Exchange and to make sure you don't miss a single episode of what we do. We're just rounding things off, lads, a wee bit tight for time, but just a couple of updates. Bosun Lawal, you might have seen, has been called up to the full Ireland squad. Obviously had a very good season for Fleetwood Town, played 47 times, and he's there this week as part of their squad for their games with Hungary and Portugal, so good luck to him. Elsewhere, you might have seen Rudi Vata talking about his hopes that Rocco does sign the new deal that's been put to him by Celtic, which
as of yet remains unsigned. And in a similar boat, you've got Daniel Kelly, who we've seen a few times this season, not quite putting pen to paper, but hopefully not too far away. So hopefully those young lads commit their future to Celtic very soon. Joe, I'll come to you for your own final comments for the week.
I say it's a detox that I probably needed for, just my own health for just the season that we've had. But it's going to be mental times in terms of rumours and all that. I seen something about Jota being linked today, which is just the start of chaos. So, we'll see what happens. Looking forward to the Euros. Hopefully, Celtic's involvement in it, the players come out unscathed, more importantly. But, of course, looking forward to the Euros in the next few weeks.
Mif, final word goes to you.
Yeah, odd time of the season. Just that sort of in between the Euros starting, the season finishing, the kind of euphoria slightly dying down, although I'm still watching the goal on a nightly basis. I just can't really get enough of it. Different angles as well. There's a cracking one actually behind the goals. Somebody managed to get the video behind the goals as it goes in, absolute bedlam. And that is why we attend football matches, for those moments. So yeah, still on a bit of high from that, but looking forward to being refreshed by a wee break from it, and then looking forward to see who we bring in, and if we do what we've threatened to do in the past 2 years, and that's really put our foot down and really target the areas of the squad that need improving. The next few weeks will tell us everything.
It will do. And in terms of Adam Ida and Paulo Bernardo, talks seem to be ongoing. It sounds like they're both keen on a move, but whether Celtic can make the deal work, let's see what happens. So that wraps things up on this latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to Joe and Mif, and thanks to you for tuning in. The weekly show will be on a short break for a couple of weeks, but in the meantime, we'll have plenty of special episodes lined up to ensure you still get your regular fix of the Celtic Exchange. Have I told you that, Mif? I'm telling you now. Remember to visit the celticexchange.supercast.com to see how you can support what we do. But in the meantime, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.